Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today, I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to Scott Lucas from Monavate. Scott and I have been speaking beforehand, and I think we've got a great show today because there's a lot of subjects which I'm really excited about. It's in a space that I think is really, really interesting and going through a really interesting period of growth. There's a story there of a company that's doing really, really well very quickly in hindsight as well. So I think there's going to be loads that people can take away from this conversation. Scott, it's lovely having you on the show. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. No, likewise. Well, pleasure having you. We're all in the pleasure mode. So let's talk a little bit about yourself. So before we get into the nitty gritty of what's happening in the journey, everything that we're going to be talking about today, tell me a little bit about your background and how we end up talking here today.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Scott Lucas. I'm Chief Commercial Officer and co-founder of a company called Monavate. We're 2.5 years old now, I think, give or take. But this particular space, BIN sponsorship, banking as a service, acquiring, things that I've been doing for about 12, 13 years since I moved back from Spain. So I was fortunate enough to take early retirement, let's say, when I was 27, 28, moved to Spain, did the usual thing.
It's the classic story, right?
Classic story. Did the usual thing, realized I was spending more money than I was generating, stayed over there for about 7 years, met my now wife, we decided that we'd move back to the UK, standard Google search, looking for the best places to live, best chance of getting a job. We decided upon Cambridge. We then stumbled across the complexities of you can't actually, well, back then, before working from home and everything, you couldn't actually apply for a job over here until you were in country. Yeah. So we moved back to the UK, I think January 2010, with 2 weeks in a travel lodge with which to find jobs and a house.
Fortunately, there's pressure for you, right?
I think pressure makes you do things, puts you outside your comfort zone, and it worked for us. You know, inside that 2 weeks, my wife Claire found a job. We'd found a house. I'd found a job at a company called Cash Flows, one of Nick Ogden's startups, and that was the beginning of my journey in payments. You know, I was fortunate enough to start off there, looking after a customer service team, and went all the way through to being the director of sponsorship. The terrible world of Brexit then occurred, and fortunately that enabled us to then set up what we're doing now, which is, it's something I've been trying to do for a long time, to be honest, Toby. I think for whatever reason, I've always found payments to be overcomplicated, and the journey to how you make payments overcomplicated, whether it is something as simple as an acquirer holding your money for a period of time, an issuer requiring a huge amount of money from you, you know, for the pre-fund. So we've always wanted to sort of roll stuff together, but at the same time, globalize it, because the world, I mean, we're of a certain age, we're able to realize that before technology, almost the world wasn't global. Everyone worked in your own UK or European. So we've been fortunate to work with some huge technology players that are now global. But finance or FinTech has only recently begun to start catching up. You know, historically, you've needed 6 processors, 250 versions of Monavate globally to be able to do what you want to do. But payments are now embedded everywhere. So we started this, myself and my co-founder, Dirta, who I've worked with for a month after I arrived back in the UK.
Okay.
So I've known her a long, long time, with a view of just simplifying all of those things we've touched upon, just simplifying the way that people interact with payments. That was the mission that we wanted to do. And we were fortunate enough in the middle of a pandemic, met a lovely gentleman on a train.
That's how it works.
Having never raised money before and no idea at all how to do it, Toby, it was fate, if you believe in fate. Genuinely, a gentleman on a train said, I think I can help you there. And lo and behold, they took the entire series, not Series A, I should say, the entire seed round, the first £5 million.
And this was just someone who you bumped into on a train and were talking about your idea and where you wanted to go.
Genuinely. He overheard a phone call on the way back from London and said, I think I can help you. And that was the start of how we funded Monavate.
So our very, very first placement was based off a train journey as well. It's amazing what can happen on a train, isn't it? So we just started. I was back late. I bumped into someone who I vaguely knew from home, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just started a company." He said, "Oh, what in?" I said, "Financial technology recruitment." 2 weeks later, we made our first placement as a business straight after it, which is the same sort of sort of journey of funding, really, isn't it?
It was brilliant. It was brilliant, and they've been great to us. So not only was it fortunate, they've been great investors for us. So it was an amazing train journey, and here we are. Like I say, 2.5 years later, regulated in the UK, regulated in Europe. I think we're about, we've gone from maybe 4 people to 30 people. We've gone from no cards to probably 4.5 million cards inside that journey. So it's been a wondrous 2.5 years.
So as you say, it's a relatively early part of the journey. And I think beforehand we were talking about how you're operating like a major player already in that journey. You've spoken about some big numbers, straight away from the start. Even down to that head count, it's not an easy place to grow out that. And I know there's seed funding there, et cetera, but it's easily burnt, right? at the same time. So tell me what's contributed to that. How's that happened?
I think there's a few things, actually. I mean, we were fortunate enough that we had great relationships within the industry, from a point of view of not only the card schemes, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, etc., but also from some of the processors. We've known Marketa from ever since Dirta, my co-founder, did their certification. But we also had the belief of some really big customers who supported us. So the likes of Zilch, which I think was our first customer live on our platform. I've known Philip and the guys since there was 3 of them sat in a room, working out the art of the possible. So the fact that we were able to bring some customers with us on this journey from day one meant that actually, I think it's something like 14 days after the license was granted by the FCA, we were actually transacting with MasterCard and settling live transactions. So we were able to generate revenue within that first month. Yeah, which certainly helps.
Which is so unusual in that space, isn't it? I mean, yes. I think it's the runway and the procurement that strangles so many businesses, and not necessarily thinking about the time span to be able to transact and to get that money into the bank. So for you to be able to deal with that so quick, that must have come down to you're talking there about people you had relationships with. That must have been a decent exit to from your last business as well, right?
They were very supportive. It was an exit that they wanted to facilitate. They didn't want to do that, so no problems from their side of life. And I think from our point of view, you touched upon it. I think people really make this happen. I think if you've got good relationships, those people will follow you and they will help you on your journey. And absolutely. It's unusual to find people who genuinely want you to fail. Most people want to help you. Even competitors, most people want to help you on this journey. So I know what you mean. And when we felt that anyway, along this journey, we felt everybody wanted to help us wherever possible on this. And having the relationships that we've spent 13 years building really helps.
I think that's actually understood quite a lot as well, because we'll come on in a minute to the importance of people, full stop, which is your team and your growth. I know you've attracted those there, and we'll talk about the sort of special ingredients behind that. But I think the other side of people that people don't look at enough is something you spoke about right from the very start, which is having the right investors and supportive investors in that. So loads of people can get money, but that money sometimes comes with caveats that make it very, very difficult for them to grow as a business. And I've seen so many points of failure in businesses that haven't been able to get to where they want because they've chosen a partner that has the right money, but not necessarily aligned vision in terms of where it wants to be, etc. But there's another piece there that I think is very, very rarely talked about. I've done hundreds of these shows over the last few years. And it's very rarely that people talk about the quality of the client and the importance of that client. Everyone says, right, we're customer focused and they want to provide a great service, but not every client's made equal, are they? And I think the ability for clients to grow and shape and help and invest in your product and support that product. Again, going back to our journey, that we've been on. I think the best business is always people there who where it's a genuine partnership and people there who are wanting you to succeed as much as you want them to succeed at the same sort of stage. I think it's a really interesting part, particularly at the start of a journey that you're on as well.
I mean, it isn't the only way, but I think we've always felt that what we do is more solutionizing than hard selling. We're actually, if you listen to what your customer's wanting to do, there's things that we will know around the card scheme side of life, sponsorship side of life, a regulatory side of life, banking or processing that perhaps they won't, but only by listening to them and working out what it is they're actually trying to do and how it will benefit the end customer, can you be a truly successful partnership? Otherwise, you're building what you think they want, and then it may not be fit for purpose. So I think the relationships you build and the solutionizing you do up front really set the basis of everything that you will do moving forward. I think that is key.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point when it comes from a product-led type business as well. So you mentioned it before. You said you've been wanting to do this for a while. You'd seen the issue for a while. You knew it was something there which customers were talking about. Talk to us about the problem and how you solve it and who you're solving it for as well.
Historically, I've worked on sort of the acquiring side and the issuing side of life, and for whatever reason, the organizations have always wanted to keep those two businesses separate. Now, I've tried for a long time to link them together because I think there's a very logical step to link acquiring and issuing. If you take them as separate businesses, your acquirer, from a risk-based point of view, is going to hold a certain amount of your money and maybe a rolling reserve and pay you in a couple of days' time. But your issuer needs to be able to pay that transaction the next day. So if you're loading a card now, I need to be sat on your money now, but your acquirer is holding it. So you have to fund your issuer whilst your money is being held by your acquirer. And that was just one logical thing that we thought, well, actually, if we link those two things together, if I'm doing your acquiring today, the earliest that I'm going to be paid is tomorrow. So Visa and MasterCard will pay me tomorrow. If I let you issue a card today and even spend on that card today, the earliest I can send the money to Visa and MasterCard is tomorrow. So actually it just nets itself off. So this whole concept of holding money for prolonged periods of time to cover risk exposure, if you're in that chain, doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. You still need to be cautious and know what you're doing and cover all of the fraud and everything else. But I just thought, well, that's a logical thing to do. Let's try and put those two things together. And then you look at the whole way that the regulation in the world is built, that you can have a global processor. You can connect to Visa and MasterCard and other card schemes everywhere now. You need to have a certification in every jurisdiction, but you can't do it from a sponsor point of view. So I mentioned working with technology from Uber Eats and people like this, whereby they need payments embedded. They don't care if Monavate's providing it. What they care is that they can issue that card to pay for that food at point of sale for your Uber Eats delivery or whatever it is they need to do. But they need to do that everywhere they operate. And they don't necessarily want to go out and sign 200 contracts to do that. What they'd like is ideally one tech solution that can operate everywhere. So we started this idea that, well, we can work with a processor because we're not a processor in our own right, but we plugged into episode 6 of Marketer to provide the processing. You then think, well, there's a base of a platform that can now operate globally. We can issue the BINs and bank accounts for the UK and Europe. So let's do that. Now, if our customer wants to go into the US, for instance, let's us go find a partner, because we're the regulator. Let's take that stress away from you. We'll go find a partner over there, but plug it into our infrastructure so that our customers don't have to reintegrate and end up with multiple tech plays and multiple different partners, particularly when it's not a core part of their business. They just want to be able to accept payments or make payments. So they were some of the things that I'd seen building up that no one had truly addressed. And we're not there. Don't get me wrong. We're just started on this, but that's the sort of thinking behind what we want to do. We want to have this one-stop shop solution where we can do this everywhere for people. And if, some people maybe want to sign a direct relationship with a processor and handle that side of life themselves, it's fine. We're here to help you along your journey. So we will help you do your BIN sponsorship for you. We can do your banking as a service for you. Everything's plug and play so that we can help you as you grow to get to a stage where you shouldn't need to think about your partners and how it works. And if we solutionalize this way back at the start on what you're wanting to do and where you want to go, we should have been able to build it in the right way. So you're not having to chop and change, because every time you have to chop and change or reintegrate or do anything, it's costly and it delays. And you don't want to be doing that, particularly if you're growing business, If you're recruiting customers left, right, and center, then you suddenly have to put everything on hold because you now need to go into Europe and no one had thought how you built into Europe.
That's
just not clever.
Yeah, yeah. It's a brilliantly straightforward sort of plan, isn't it? I mean, that's, you know, I think most companies I know that get real traction and have this sort of accidental sort of hyper growth early are ones there that have actually just gamed a thing, and there's no accident around it. There's no luck involved at all. This is just about trying to make things as easy as possible. I think there's so many overcomplicated, over tech plays that actually, you know, just add more friction to the you know, to the process.
Exactly that. It's what we talked about earlier, trying to make things as easy as possible. And you can see that, you know, we've started this. You've probably seen it in the news. I think Marketer have come out and said they want to go one full stack everywhere. You've obviously had the guys at SaltPay doing the same thing. I think GPS announced they were going to plug a bin sponsor into their processor. So you can see the whole world is now suddenly thinking the same thing. If we can have one stack that goes everywhere, then we're a logical partner for people to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other interesting thing about the business is the geography. So we've so often seen you know, the headlines, I think, of fast growth fintech businesses as being situated in London, but you're part of the you know, one of the other great bubbles of the UK fintech scene out in Cambridge. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Again, for me personally, it was genuinely every simple Google search you will ever do is how I ended up in Cambridge. But honestly,
Google's got a lot to answer for.
Honestly, the lowest crime rate, best chance of a job, all of the things that you would cliche type into Google to try and find somewhere to live is exactly what we did. I'd never been to Cambridge before coming here, but it's beautiful. And it's only when I got here I actually realized just what a fintech center it actually is. I mean, not only have you got the university, which is phenomenal, which everybody knows about, but if you look about it, I think we mentioned Nick Ogden earlier, you had WorldPay that came out of here, PaySafe or whatever it was called at the time came out of here, Cashflows, where I used to work, came out of here, all out of little Cambridge. All of these are phenomenal fintech players. We're 40 minutes from London. There's a great development teams over here. So for us, it was a very, very logical place for us to get up and running for the UK side of life. And I think this whole concept of London being the center of everything, I get, you know, there's a lot of people there, but we work remotely. And actually, as we were talking off camera earlier, there's a whole lot of reasons why fintech hubs should exist. And I was talking here, I'm originally from Halifax. I say way up north because I'm now sat in Cambridge, but from West Yorkshire. And we were just talking then about, you know, the financial institutions that have come out of there. Halifax itself, Skipton Building Society, Leeds Perm, all of these different financial institutions that are all around Halifax and the surrounding areas.
Well, it was a rich track record of it, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you've got West Yorkshire there and Leeds at the centre. It's a great place to have a financial hub. You've got the same as you go to West Midlands, Coventry, and the building sites. There's a whole great plethora of people who can play a real part in this fintech explosion because they've been involved in it at all levels through their career, potentially without realizing. But there's a real, I think it's better for the industry to have these not individual places, these fintech hubs outside of London. So not everybody is saying the same things that sat in London doing the same things. Actually, you'll get a lot more experience, a lot more knowledge, because not everyone does things the same when you go to these different jurisdictions. And I think we were talking before, you know, there was the Sir Ron Khalifa report, and there was Rishi Sunak pledging money to make this happen. For me, I think it's a great thing. I think that is what should be happening. Not everything should be based in London with the same people.
Yeah, and I think you've seen various pockets, haven't we? You know, as you say, there's you know, tech in general coming out of Cambridge has always been strong, and there's a big talent supply that goes into that. I think Leeds has been impressive over recent years, and some of the you know, some of the businesses we've seen out there, Manchester to an extent, Bristol to an extent, but there's you know, it's always going to come down to, you know, accessibility to, you know, to talent, and I think that's that's a big part of what Cambridge can do to, you know, to have, you know, some of the best talent in the world that comes directly out of it, and is happy to stay there. And you know, you don't have to migrate to you know, to London to see that happening.
You don't. Unfortunately, the industry that we're in, the bin sponsorship, it's a little bit niche. So the fact that there has been, you know, a Cashflow's doing it and a PaySafe doing it means that there is people sat here who has some of that knowledge which you can lean in. But I think the other side of that is that, I've done it for 13 years. Dirt has done it for 13 years. So we don't know everything. So it's nice to have third-party opinion. It's nice to get other people in who aren't necessarily from our bin sponsorship world, but to actually challenge us, get the right people in to ask you, why are you doing that? Just because I've done it for 13 years doesn't mean it's right. So
where do you get those people? I mean, is that talking about advisory, or is that talking about people coming in to work in the team?
It's a bit of both, input? In all honesty. It's a bit of both. Certainly advisory, and I think some of the conversations you have through people you meet really feed into what we're doing. But I think getting people into this organization as well. So we're not set on having people who've been in the industry for 10 years involved, where, as I talked about my story, I started doing a customer service team lead at Cash Flows 13 years ago. And here I am, founder of a FinTech. So we believe strongly in people and the mentality of people and their desire to make things better. So you don't necessarily need to understand FinTech, because we will happily hold your hand, hopefully help and mold you, and we go on this journey together. But for me, I'd much rather give people the opportunity to grow within my organization than go and find a direct version of me and bring them in. I'd rather let people come in and show me what they can do and challenge my perception. I've been doing this a long time. And as I said, doesn't mean my way of thinking is right. The new generation, completely different thinking to mine. So let's get them in, let's ask them the questions, and let's have that culture where they're allowed to ask you questions.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Because not only then, but it certainly helps with the understanding of why you're doing something, because you will then question yourself.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned this to, before we came on air, and I think it's so important. And quite often there can be, certainly in a founder, a little bit of hubris around this, but I think that you are very, very clear that it's the people that you've got in the business that allow Monavate to have done and achieved what it's done and continues to do, and become this this very quick success story as a business. So I'm interested in this because I think the first 5 to 10 is a relatively straightforward sort of process of people people who've been been in the industry for a while. You've got a network, etc., etc. It's not a big world there in Cambridge to be able to go out and so you will have an element of knowledge around that. 20 to 30, I think, is an interesting phase, as is the next sort of bit for you. So talk to me about how you've become. I recently listened to an interview with founder of lastminute.com, one of the two founders of Last Minute, and he was talking about being a talent magnet, doing things that were so cool and revolutionary that people wanted to flock to that business. Yeah. And you're humming my tune when you talk about people and their importance and significance. I know that an average product and a great team can make an average product great. I know that a great product and a terrible team are going to make a great product pretty average in terms of its ability, and certainly won't move it further forward. So this is something which I'm very, very passionate about, and I'm always keen on this show to unlock people who've done it well and allowed themselves to become somewhere where they're able to fill a room with the greatest mind in their space. So talk to me a little bit about that journey and how you've got this super team together.
I think some of it you've sort of said. I mean, the first 10 people, what you need in place from day one to run the business. So you get the people in who can do this. Then there's a regulatory side of life. We need X number of people sat in Lithuania to make sure that we're compliant. So a lot of these tick the boxes themselves. But then as you go beyond that initial running phase, get people up and running, you then need to look at how you extend outwards. We've been fortunate that we can automate a lot of this as we've gone along, because we started from zero, so we could build this out. And then you look at, actually, what is it that this place wants from people? And it is more about the culture. It's more about what those people can offer to Monavate that we think can help solutionize and change what we do. So our relationship manager is from a very corporate world of BT. Yeah, we never thought for a second he'd fit into a FinTech. But he's come in, hit the ground running, some great ideas of how you can take the best of the BT side of life and plug it in to organize some of the chaos is the wrong word, but that startup mentality and organize that. And he's been a great hire. So
that's an intro. Just to pull on that one. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm really interested in this, because if I look at attrition, one of the key things that we'll always look at is taking someone from a large company and putting them into a small company, which very much goes one of two ways. So as you say, there's one there where you can bring some of that great insight in from a, an enterprise, and it can, translate, and we can do that, and it can help us professionalize as an organization when you're going through that sort of growth journey. On another side, it can become so black and white and regimented from where it goes that it fights very heavily against that sort of startup feel. So how did you get that right? Because, rather than that being a slam dunk,
isn't it?
Yeah, that's our place. Yeah.
It is. It's a process. It's various interviews, it's various meetings, but it's about talking to that individual. It's not necessarily about his work experience. It's about that individual himself. And first and foremost, will he fit into what we're trying to do here? The fact he's got these great skills and everything is amazing, but will he actually come in and fit into the startup lifestyle? And then if he can fit into the startup lifestyle, can he then adjust and bring some of that stuff over? So we don't do one interview. We do numerous interviews. We meet people in person. We go for a coffee, and we actually try and spend a little bit of time to get to know if they're the right person. Because I think putting a little bit more time in up front often means you do get the decisions right 90% of the time. I mean, there's still going to be attrition. But the good news is, so far, touch wood, we've been quite successful in the people we've hired, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. But I do think putting emphasis on meeting those people and listening to them. Yeah. What is it that they want? Does it fit with what you want? And is there a common understanding of how you can make this a better thing?
That's a very important part of that, because it's listening to what they want. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? Doesn't it? But and it sounds common sense, but I'm a big advocate that common sense isn't always common practice. And I still believe that there is despite tech shortages, despite everything we've seen, there's an awful lot of people interviewing saying, tell me why I should invest in you, as opposed to, this is why you should invest in me and trust me, your career in that. And I think what you'll have found from there is there are people there who could probably do the job, where it's just not quite as aligned as it could be from either side. And I think that's a really obvious thing to say, but I think that sort of genuine interest in the interview in the person, as opposed to a set of questions or a profile or a piece of black and white paper that you're looking for. It's very much character orientated. And I think as a business, we're going to be doing a lot more work on how to hire on character, because I think it's just such an integral part of the job.
It certainly helped us with that 20 to 30 number of people. Yeah. It certainly helped us getting those right characters in the business. Yeah. Because actually, we're still at the stage, I think we're maybe 35 people now. I don't know the exact number. It changes all the time, but
36 by the end of the conversation, right?
Probably, yeah. But it helps, because certainly in the startup side of life, you've got to be flexible. You've got to have a bit of character about you. You're not sat doing one task. You're getting involved in lots of different things. So the person in that next stage of the journey, the 10 to 20, 20 to 30, have got to be wanting the same thing. They've got to want to come on that journey with you. And we need to bring them with us. So I think maybe as we expand and we get to 50, 60, 70 people, then there's going to be some normal, we need people in at 9 and we need them to finish at 5, and you do everything you need. But that's just because you need that in an organization. But I do think characters are certainly what makes this organization and makes the industry.
Yeah. And that's still part of the character, right? Those people who are in the thing there, they can still contribute massively to that culture. And they've got to be the right people. I think it's when people just hire people to do a job because their skill set say they can do that job, that it starts to erode the whole culture and environment of that organization. So I'm a big believer in that, and well done, because that's not an easy part to get done as a business. The other thing that's not easy as a business is to go into an area which I think with the hype that we've been hearing over recent years is could be articulated as saturated. Again, going back to my story as a company, everyone was talking to me. I've interviewed people for years talking about a saturated marketplace, technology, IT recruitment is saturated, etc. My view on it is I've never listened to saturated, because I believe that if you've got a world-class quality around it, that only helps you if it's a saturated market, because people are so bored with the same within it. But tell me a little bit about how you've broken through that. I know you take a sort of full stack sort of approach to the provision that you build. But talk to us a little bit about how you're avoiding that sort of saturation trap to compete so successfully as you have been.
I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into it. For me, I think you can't get away from the solutionizing and listening to what your customers want. You are right. You could argue acquiring is very saturated, but I'm not trying to be an acquirer. I'm trying to help my customers in that particular sector. So I'm not trying to compete with WorldPay. So I'm taking this little bit to enable my customers to get money into my accounts, into my cards. So it's solutionizing what we can do to make things better for our customers. It's about listening to them. It's about trying to make things easier across the board. That one integration to give you multiple banking partners. It's about listening. It really is. It's about the people that you're interacting with, and can you listen to them, and can you provide a service that they need? If they want to compete on price, then they can, and they'll find someone who can do that for them. But if you spend a bit of time with the customers, work out what it is they're wanting to do, build it in the correct manner on the correct product, you can probably build it quicker. You can probably build it for longevity, which then means you might save a penny a transaction for math's sake, but it will last you with my conduct for as long as you need it. With someone else, you might need to iterate. It might take 9 months to go to live, because you'll go through that journey and realize that that isn't actually what I wanted, because I didn't know what I wanted when I started speaking to a BIN sponsor, because I didn't know how it would work. So by taking that time and listening and working out the art of the possible up front, I think you can save costs. Running from standstill with a dev team, integrating with no revenue coming in, you're burning all that cash that you've raised or that you're funding yourself. By finding the right partner who is able to get you to market with it, what it actually is you're wanting, I think is how we've been able to win. There are people who do very similar things to us, but we like to think that we do it slightly different. And it is that listening to people and then working with the card schemes to work out the art of the possible. There's some huge players out there that are now beginning to combine these things, but we're still picking up customers left, right, and center because of the relationships we have. If we didn't have the relationships and we weren't delivering, then maybe it'd be a different conversation. So as long as we're doing what we're doing now, touch wood, then I think we will succeed. Because I think there's always going to be the right way for something to be built. And again, so far, the people we've built for have stayed with us on our journey. Some have migrated over with us, as I said before, Zilch and the like. So I think that's a big thing. And I don't think it can be overestimated where we are. You talk about full stack and this idea that it's true, everyone's wanting to get a full stack, because you get one integration, it gives you everything you will ever need, everywhere you ever want to go. And of course, that makes complete sense. But you still need to build the right things on that full stack.
Yeah. I think there's the whole concept of the strategy, quality being the strategy, right? Build something quality, and then it will take care of itself. I also love that the idea there that you can either disrupt something or you can perfect it. And in those saturated marketplaces or perceived saturated marketplaces, I think there's a lot of just going through the motions. And if I spend a lot of time thinking about these conversations that I'm very fortunate to have week in, week out with people like yourselves who are doing extraordinary things. And I look for something, I posted about it on LinkedIn the other day in terms of leadership, but I also look for things in terms of the business as to what sort of represents the golden thread of all these. And I've written about it, various different phases. But the thing I think you've spoken about that there, or the two of the things which I think are massive that you've spoken about and recurring themes, are simplicity and listening to your customers.
Yeah.
And I think if you've got great customers who you are very, very passionate about solving their problems, and you're able to spend time, and this is why I think so many product managers are now making great founders at the same time, or ex-product managers are making great founders, is these are people who are listening and to customer demands and customer thoughts and saying, right, how can we tailor our product to do that? Well, I think that's an incredibly important role in every company at the moment. But yeah, really interesting seeing it. So let's move on to the payments world itself. We've spoken about a marketplace there that a lot of people have been speaking about. There's a whole load of change and new players and existing players and big companies coming back into it. And there's one thing's 1,000,000% sure is that there's a world of opportunity in it, and the hype cycle isn't moving particularly quickly, and people are constantly looking for the best ways to play in it. So get your crystal ball out. We're starting the second quarter of the year as we're doing this. This will probably come out in the towards the start of the summertime. By the time we've got you out into the ether, tell me a little bit about what we can see happening in the second half of the year in this space.
Here we go. So we've been seeing for a while the whole world of credit, because if you think of the evolution, you've been through this prepaid journey where people had prepaid cards. Then you came to just-in-time funded cards, which were by default debit cards. The one market that hasn't really had a whole lot of founders get into historically has really been the world of credit. I mean, we can talk about buy now, pay later and Zilch and Scala Pays and everyone else who are now putting cards into their platform. And what they've done is phenomenal. They've got everybody talking. It's a great checkout experience. It's a really, really nice way to now shop.
Mm.
But what it has done is it's meant a lot of the potentially big, really big credit providers have seen maybe some of their customers erode. And they realize that, if you look at point of sale finance, they will spend an awful lot of money to get one customer for one store. They'll pay that store for that to happen. And then inevitably you'll go next door to a different store. You maybe sign up for point of sale finance with the same company for another line of credit that they've just paid for again. Well, why shouldn't they use some of the payment mechanisms that are out there? So instead of giving a fixed 20 grand for a kitchen and then go next door and spend 3,000 on your white goods, why not just say, actually, Toby, we think you're good for 25 grand. Here's 25 grand.
Yeah.
Go and spend your kitchen here, go next door and do your white goods. Because not only have they then got customer insight to you, they've also got a whole lot of data on you. They know what you're shopping. You can then go and maybe buy your tiles from somewhere else. So they're picking up insights on what you're doing, which can then help them with when they go and negotiate which stores they should be in, what discounts they should be getting. But also it gives them that customer as a reoccurring customer. They're not continually paying for that. So I can see people like that moving into this world. I think because of some of the stuff that Episode 6 are doing with credit, TSYS are doing with credit, they're reducing the entry to market. You're going to see a lot more credit players coming into this space and actually doing some really good stuff. We're starting to see the world of insurtech. It's been talked about for so many years. How can you get insurance companies to speed up claims payments? How can you get them to sort out medical bill payments or pet insurance? We've actually seen this come through now, where you're getting to the point where I no longer have to wait 6 months for a check to turn up at my door for a house claim. Here's a card, or here's a payment straight into your bank account. Knock yourselves out. Go spend the money. They'll derive some interchange on it, so they'll get revenue back. They'll get data on where you're spending. So I think because it's now a lot easier and there's a lot more data available, I do see things like large credit players, insurance players coming to market. I think even aside from what's happened in the world of Bitcoin and some of the FTXs and everything else, I do think that stable coins and digital
100%. Absolutely agree with that.
I think
it was almost necessary, wasn't it, to have that sort of blip. So they could become more regulated as necessary to then be able to become more fit for purpose and trusted. That was always it was always a trust issue, and that the underlying concept works, right? Yeah,
for me it is the underlying concept. The assets are phenomenal. You do play with them, do whatever you want. But for me, it's the underlying technology. Even today, we have programs in Czech Republic, and it still takes 2 or 3 days for me to send money there.
Yeah.
Which I could theoretically go and withdraw it from cash, drive there quicker than I can send it via the banking system. And then you move into the world of stablecoin and digital currencies, and you think, well, actually, I can irrefutably prove I've sent that money to you. It's in your account. So why can't I do instant settlement with the card schemes? Which then means, why can't a card scheme do instant settlement with the merchant? And then it becomes like cash. So I think that's something I'm looking forward to becoming more apparent, not just the asset side of life, but actually the underlying technology and how it can be plugged into this one tech stack we talked about before, to make it so that we can choose the best way to settle transactions, the best way to move money around, because that's what it should be used for. Yeah. And as you said, I do think that blip was inevitable. And I do think that the players that will be left are hopefully the right ones, and we can move forward. Because I think that's a phenomenal opportunity that isn't going away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's already the signs of the next. I've seen I've seen numerous parts of the hype cycle come down and come up, and that was a pretty deep winter that they went into. But you can see it in terms of, if you look at barometers, the hiring is always part of it, and we're seeing more and more stuff come back into that world again. So yeah, watch the space. I agree with everything you just said there. It's been fascinating. Look, I could talk a lot more about this as well. Your story's there. I'm going to ask you two last questions. The first of which is that I love. I said it at the start. I had some lovely feedback recently where someone had been on this show and someone reached out to them, and they went and had a meeting, and that's what we want to do. We want to have people reaching out and connecting, and people seeing interesting people. We're talking about interesting things and saying, right, how can we help that and do that? So tell me who should be speaking to you at the moment. Who should be reaching out to you?
Anybody with an interest in how they think payments can make their life or their company's life better. I mean, there's no such thing as a bad conversation. We literally got someone reach out to us the other day saying, would payments in my ecosystem work? And actually, yes, of course they would. You're making cross-border payments. So just by reaching out to us, we can have a very simple introductory conversation to see if there's something there. So if you think payments, be it card, bank, acquiring, for that, just reach out to us. Let's have a quick 15, 20-minute conversation and see if there's something there for you, or at least point you in a direction of where, it may be able to be. So ping me, scott@monavate.com, ping Barry, my head of sales or sales director, barry@monavate.com. Go to the website and drop us a note. We'll get in touch. Let's have a conversation. Let's grab a coffee.
And approach you on a train is the other thing as well, right?
Yeah.
Where all great conversations start. The other question I wanted to ask was going back to this, and I sort of let this slide, and it's been in the back of my head ever since you first started the conversation. Was when you retired at 27 out to Spain. What happened before 27 to allow that to happen?
Nothing. I worked for a bank. I got to 27 and decided I didn't like where I was. I didn't like doing that anymore, and my parents lived in Spain. I thought, actually, let's just stop. Let's get off this. Let's get off this train. See what else is out there.
Doesn't sound like a bad gig. It's been fast. That's the thing for another show. I think we got something we can pick up.
That's something for other beers, definitely.
Definitely. Scott, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show. It's a great story. I love seeing these. I love talking to people who've got that excitement, passion, who are on that journey, who've come from an environment I know well over at Cash Flows, taking it out of here and are doing something that's clearly working, clearly clicking because it's listening to customers and putting in and answering questions and making it as simple as possible. So for that, I massively commend you. I'm always in awe of great businesses like that doing really cool things. So long may it continue, and I'll be watching really, really closely as the story continues to play out. So Scott, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing that story today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.